our Startup Nations network that a lot of countries, despite their differences, also have very similar challenges when it comes to promoting entrepreneurship. So we started a community, and I see many members of our community here. Thank you for joining us. It is our strength relies in the knowledge they have in testing, in failing on the ground and succeeding as well. And we try to capture those stories throughout the year via the Startup Nations Atlas of Policies, which I invite you to visit online. It's SNAP is the acronym. So that's a compendium of policy ideas and also policy experiments from around the world. We also have a program that any country can adopt. We have a playbook called the Startup Nations Policy Hack, which puts countries it gives countries a chance to bring stakeholders together to the table, which normally don't talk to each other, to coordinate in the design of policies. Because a lot of policies in the past have been designed without actually asking the investors they were supposed to benefit or the entrepreneurs. So we try to change that and create an incentive via the policy hack, and you're welcome to come talk to me or my colleague Charolta about that later. We also connect policy making to research to the extent we can via our Global Entrepreneurship Research Network. And we also have really cool policy thought leaders like Dane Stanger, who's our Senior Advisor for Policy. And I'll turn it over to him. He also he's also a member of this research community I mentioned the GERN via Startup Genome, which some of you may know already from their report. The main goal for the session here is for everyone to engage in a conversation about your experiences and challenges, to be candid about your country's difficulties in terms of policy making for entrepreneurs. So don't be shy. I hope it will be fun, and I'll turn over to Dave now.
Is the GERN meeting open?
Yes.
Yeah. Thanks, Cristina. Can everyone hear me okay?
Just keep the mic.
Like this?
I like this.
I'm singing. Cristina, you should all have a copy of the Startup Nations Policy Hack Playbook. If you don't, we have copies up here. I work for Startup Genome, in addition to being a senior advisor at Gen. The Startup Genome, we just this week at GEC, we released a summary, or printed a summary version of our Global Startup Ecosystem report that has an article in there about some preliminary policy work that we have done with our members, but that we also did through some of the resources that Cristina mentioned, especially SNAP, the Startup Nations Atlas of Policies. So we highly encourage Gen countries to contribute to SNAP. So we're going to do in this hour, we're going to hear from two countries, South Africa and Ecuador, who are going to take us, hopefully, inside the policymaking process. Challenges they faced, how they navigated the politics, how they built political support, and how they're still doing, actually, how the process is going. And then, as Cristina mentioned, we really want this to be a conversation. So ideally we would hear, a little bit from everyone about a challenge, a success, maybe something that didn't succeed. Yesterday in the ministerial, we asked ministers from your countries to talk about things that didn't work, and they were actually incredibly candid about some of the challenges that they have faced and continue to face, and things that they tried that didn't work. So I hope we can be similarly open here. Before I turn it over to Naomi, can we just do a quick, just tell me what country you're from, and I'll repeat it back to the group so we can get a good idea of the diversity here. Venezuela, U.S., but where in the U.S.?
Florida.
Where in Florida? Tampa. Where in Southern California? Newport Beach. Where? Tanzania. USDC. Venezuela. Bahrain. Cambodia. Miami. Got a big Florida contingent. Denver. Chad. Korea. Senegal. And Ivory Coast. South Africa. Ecuador. Korea. Quito, Ecuador. Kenya. Brazil. Taiwan. Afghanistan. So we have this is a terrifically geographically representative group.
And Paraguay.
And Paraguay. I'm sorry. And I missed Gibraltar too. I missed Paraguay. Sorry. So we'll go ahead and get to our brief presentations, and then we really want to make this a conversation because we want to learn, we want to take those lessons back to the tech community. We want to analyze, as we do in this report, what seems to be working, what seems to not be working, and then again work with all of you to help figure out better policy design and structure. So Naomi?
Thank you, Dane. Good afternoon, everyone. I think I've been introduced. Let me introduce myself properly. I'm Naomi Kubek from South Africa, the City of Gold in Johannesburg. I'm working for an institution called Industrial Development Corporation. In short, we call it IDC. Some says, I don't care, but we call it I do care because we wouldn't be here if we didn't care. And we are one of a state, we are the state-owned entity that assists entrepreneurs within the parameters of South Africa and involved in every activity that the government gets involved in terms of funding for the entrepreneurs within South Africa. I was asked to talk about policy design and implementation, and my colleague Alisimo will outline the challenges and part of the solutions we're looking at. Maybe let me start by, just for the benefit of this gathering, to define what policy is. Policies are mainly described as government statements that explains or elaborate in what government aims to do or not to do, including law, regulation, ruling, decision, or order. They are there to fulfill specific goals of identifying and solving certain problems, especially societal ones. Those we refer to as the public policies. And they are the ones that always have got some challenges more than the private policies. It will spell out precisely the process to be followed in identifying and solving these challenges. Then coming to South Africa, one of those policy, one example of such policy is the NDP, the National Development Plan. Its aim was set to eliminate poverty and reduce inequality, thereby building the economy. To realize its goal, it's look at drawing the energies of the people it was intended to serve, growing an inclusive economy, building capabilities of the SA youth entrepreneurs, women and youth, and enhancing the capacity of the state specifically in promoting the leadership and partnerships throughout the society. Of course, there are challenges in the setting of any policies, but more so in implementation, which NDP was not unique to, and it's different stakeholders sitting here in this platform. We are here, we are hoping that in some of the challenges that we're going to outline, platforms like this will assist in terms of coming with those ideas that will assist and help us in setting them, in working on what we thought are the shortcomings and gaps. SA is not unique. One of the challenges is in the environment, in one of the policies that we have in South Africa was the environment policy, which was focusing solely on educational and economic opportunities for young people, which the NDP tried to correct and is also trying ongoing too. And the examples are endless. I can go on and on. So SA is not unique in challenges of implementing policies like any other country. And we hope by sharing our challenges and suggested solution in these platforms, we'll be able to get it through. As I have said, my colleague Alisimo will look at the challenges, but part of all the other interventions that we made through the Gen Hub within SA was to have a policy hack, which was done in 2018, where IDC funded in terms of looking at those challenges come with possible solutions, or come with, looking at what we can bring together in making sure that we deal with those challenges. And which is from that we, in last year, I think in Surabaya, we were looking at the digitalizing of the procurement policies, because that came out strongly within the policy hack when we're dealing with the entrepreneurs. I just wanted to outline the design and implementation. So I want Alissimo to take the challenges and the possible solutions. Thereafter, we can take questions and look at how, as this collection, we can add more in terms of making sure that this happens. Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, my name is Alessimo Mwanga. I'm from South Africa, based at Trinity Sloan. I'm a research director there. So as Naomi had mentioned, she gave an outline on what we're focusing on in South Africa. So we basically are driving economic growth using the National Development Plan that was created about 10 years ago. The challenge with that is that there wasn't a huge focus on entrepreneurship. And so 10 years fast forward, we have a Department of Small Business Development, we've got a Department of Trade and Investment, and we've got state-owned institutions and implementing agencies. So we've got all these multiple players, and no real focus on how we're actually going to implement this National Development Plan. So fast forward 10 years later, they focused on reviewing and doing an SME annual review and finding out that we have way too many departments, way too many other agencies, and also provincial and local governments. We also unpacked that even further and realized that local governments are actually the implementers of policy implementation. And how do we now focus on getting local governments to be part of the decision making and also drafting policies at a national level? Because what happens is at national level, they draft policies as a top-down approach instead of a bottom-up approach. So that's one of the challenges that we identified in consultation with the Department of Small Business Development, which is really trying really hard to identify action plans and frameworks that can be used to address some of these barriers. So engaging with them with World Bank as well as UNCTAD, we discovered 5 key challenges using the Startup Nations Policy Hack Playbook, and then we brought together 50 stakeholders from national, provincial, and local level. We had regional visitors from various African countries, and we had a couple of hours and experts to then hack solutions, which we gave them an incentive for a trip to Surabaya to then engage with national experts to then further refine this policy solution. Now it's all well and good to have a policy hackathon, bring together stakeholders, have a discussion like this, and then we all go home and do nothing about it. The challenging part is actually getting them to participate and be involved. So including the department from the very beginning and a state-owned organization like the Industrial Development Corporation that funds a lot of SMEs and is in their best interest to support the change of influence in policy making, it was very easy to then get government officials to participate in the process. So after Surabaya, we decided that we would focus on piloting the solution that we identified. One of them is obviously access to markets. So looking at digitizing procurement, either through e-government or through private sector. And we found out that Kenya and Nigeria also faces similar problems. So in Surabaya, we were looking at how to identify similar challenges and solutions that we could then cross-learn from each other. So now in South Africa in 2019, having engagements with provincial governments and national governments, and I'm glad to see them here, to try and finalize a partnership between the 3 spheres of government and test if we can use the digital procurement solution through public sector to be able to address market access challenges in South Africa. So that's where we are, and I look forward to hearing other people's lessons learned too. Thank you.
Thanks, Alessia. Before we move to Natalia from Ecuador, how many of you have held, is this free? How many of you are interested in holding a policy hack in your country? Actually, first let's back up. Does everyone know what a policy hack is? Does anyone want it explained? Yeah. You want to explain the policy hack? Sarolta, you want to explain the policy hack?
So, hello everybody, my name is Charlotte. I work with Czech Global with Cristina and Dan and most of our team. So we developed the policy hack methodology 2 years ago in Estonia. The local ministry responsible for entrepreneurship there helped us a lot with this process. It's basically a methodology for you to engage entrepreneurs, investors, researchers into designing good policy for entrepreneurs. The problem that we started is we have politicians coming together and making decisions, but they don't really ask or know how to ask entrepreneurs or investors about their opinion. So this was the problem we wanted to tackle, and our good friend Nick from Estonia came up with this idea. If entrepreneurs are good doing hackathons, maybe we can put policymakers to do the same. So we took the methodology from hackathons and implemented it with policy people. So at the end of the day, what we came up is basically a 1 or 2 day program. We run it with 1 day. And why is this special? We ask our members, but you can do it with whatever policy people. We ask the officials responsible doing public policy to come up with the problem. What is the problem that they feel needs to be tackled, and then you select somebody from the agency who's responsible on implementing that solution. Then you crowdsource some entrepreneurs, investors, researchers, and stakeholders you think may have a different view on the topic. And you bring them together for 1 day to hack a solution. So it's very similar for any kind of hackathon you can imagine. The magic is that they all bring a different view, but they are somehow physically put together to work 1 day. And obviously this is just proof of concept, this is just a solution, it's not a decision yet. So after like Alessimo already presented, after you find a proposal at the end of the day, you have to make sure that the one responsible for implementation goes through the process. But the important thing is that he already has the arguments, the resources to do that, to go out there in the political field and fight the fight. So this is a policy hack that can be very helpful. It can be implemented on local level too. And we do run some global policy hacks, and it can be a regional event too. But at the baseline, it's a methodology helping you engage the private sector stakeholders into policy making. So if you have any questions,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there a methodology that we can get implemented in our country, or we need to get someone from you to run it?
You can get it, and you can. You don't have to engage for it. You don't have to engage us for it. We are here to help and support you in this endeavor, but
So we can do it separately.
you can do it in your country, in your region. We are here to help.
I just want to add one thing. We're happy to support you though, if you want. But these are the basic guidelines, and then we have a communications channel where we connect those who have organized one in their countries already. So this is an evolving playbook because we already started iterating and improving on the concept so that for better results. And this is very much focused on design, policy design, as Charlotta and Alessimo have explained, but we also hope that you will stay engaged with Jen and the Startup Nations community to tell us how implementation went, because that's where we can really measure whether it was worth the effort or whether you were able to sell it to your local government. Yes, Florence.
Thank you, Christina. My name is Florence Kimata, SME advisor at the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives. Kenya is very interested in doing a policy hack. I think I've told Christina this before. We were also happy to get the opportunity to participate in the Surabaya in the policy hack that was initiated by South Africa. Of course, that was part of capacity building, but more importantly, we thought the solution is something that can be scaled up regionally, Africa-wide. We know that we are moving towards a continental free trade area, so such solutions would obviously help us. But as an advisor to government, which, as Sarolta says, has been very traditional in policy making in terms of prescribing policy, the policy hackathon is relatively new to most governments. I talk about it, and first of all, it's a problem even to pronounce policy hackathon, for most people. So as I keep on talking about it, I feel like it would be beneficial to work closely with GEM Global and with other countries who have done it, to get the buy-in of government, the same way we share experiences here and we are able to adopt what other countries are doing. I think it would be good to make the connections with those countries more deliberately so that we can have somebody from one of the other countries which has done it successfully support us and also get the buy-in from government to run the policy hackathon. But otherwise, I plan to initiate the process in June during a national event called the Nairobi Innovation Week. So I hope that we can dialogue and hopefully have somebody come in. I think it's always important to have that global success story of a process on co-creation of policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Florence. You made a very interesting point, which is we don't just throw the guidelines at you. We're there to provide support to the extent you need it. And if it's not from our global office, from our chapters and Startup Nations policy network members from around the world, because as you will see in the guidebook, you will need some mentors for each of the teams. And we're happy to provide you with experts in the policy areas that your teams will be tackling. So definitely. And also, I wanted to say, as an additional incentive to your governments, we're happy to write a letter to them saying we're supporting this with you, and that we will provide the winner a trip to the global edition of the Policy Hack, which we do at least once a year. So that you're the winner emerging from your local Policy Hack can then go and further hack the solution, further refine the solution at the global edition with team members from around the world who have tested similar policies in their own countries, and then they present it to a global audience. So we do provide a lot of incentives for governments to do, as you say, get more used to the idea of the bean bags and more relaxed atmosphere when it comes to policy making. Thank you.
I don't think there have been any beanbags at the hackathons that I have. Now how many people want to have a policy hack? Should be everyone, come on. All right, Natalia is from Ecuador. You can come tell us about how things really went down in Ecuador in terms of building partnership and getting policy done.
Thanks, Dane. Well, it's an honor to be here and sharing our experience on creating or making policy for our country. I work at an organization that is called Alliance for Entrepreneurship and Innovation. Now it's representing in Ecuador. And what we do is we put together lots of actors from public, private, and academic sector together so we can create and formulate different activities in terms of helping entrepreneurs in our country. We want to put it as one of the most entrepreneurial ecosystem in the region. So one of the areas that we work for is the regulatory framework. Things are happening in the country, entrepreneurs are doing their stuff, and there are investors already helping these entrepreneurs. However, the policy is not very clear, and there's a lot of blocking stages where not even investors can go through the whole investing processes, or the entrepreneurs can take advantage of all the different resources in the ecosystem. This is why we created and we formulated policy that became then a project of law of entrepreneurship and innovation. After 5 years or so, this entrepreneurship project law it's approved by the Assembly, National Assembly in our country. So, well,
this has been done already, but it has not been a better process, as it said. Actually, we've been through like ups and downs throughout all these processes. And first of all, getting to the main authorities in our country, we have democracy, government, so we have a president, and then we have National Assembly for all the laws. So what we did first is gather all the entrepreneurs and the actors in the ecosystem in terms of what are their needs, what there really needs that in the ecosystem, it's priority. So we heard all these different stories from entrepreneurs and from different players, and then what we did is just like get together all these different proposals. We got in tabled like in kind of workshops where we sat with them and we started to collect all this information that they could tell us, like justify why to create a policy framework with all these different proposals. Then within the network, we have also legal assessment from different firms. So we got together all these different attorneys from different legal firms, and we said, hey, you have to help us to create one policy framework, one law with all the different proposals that our players are telling us that it's needed. Then we also did a benchmarking, investigating what is happening in the world, what is happening in Latin America, and hearing who has all their policy frameworks or at least similar cases. So we studied them. We also helped by the UNCTAD, United Nations Conference Trade and Development, who helped us with, well, they have this methodology about policy framework that helps us a lot in doing like all the technical support, as I may say. So in this whole time, it was like around 2 years already, like creating and putting all the information together. Then we were ready to start talking with authorities. So we started talking with national government, the central government, and then also to local authorities, because it was also needed to have people in the National Assembly to hear about our proposals and kind of like be friends of what we wanted to share. During this whole process, there has been changes in the government, so new ministers, new mayors of the city, new assembly candidates. So we have to be all the time talking to new people, presenting them and like telling why it's important to have an entrepreneurship law and innovation in Ecuador. So this has been maybe one of the biggest challenges, like always passing the same message to different people. However, it has helped us also to get stronger, because with the time goes by, we have more players in our back. We have more people that is behind this project saying we have to get it done. And in terms of what is in the project, we have, well, there's some bankruptcy proposals because we don't have a bankruptcy law in Ecuador. There is also facilities or incentives for investing in entrepreneurs, and also to invest more in innovation. That is the things that we mapped out that are the most important ones. So it has been like lots of lessons during the road. We still have some more challenges to go because it's already approved project in the National Assembly, but now we need to go through the debates and then finally get approved. The next step is we are going to run a policy hub in June. We are planning already with Cristina and her team to get our government aware of what's happening in the world and what can we do together. So these are part of the next steps, and I will be happy to share more. Also, Camilo is here from AI if you want to ask any questions about our organization and this project.
Thanks, Natalia. Okay, we have 20 minutes, 25 minutes left. So now we'd like to open it up for discussion. So I think what I'd like to do, Sorolta, if it's okay, is go around the room to everyone, give you the mic, and tell us in no more than 1 minute what is one. It's okay. 1 minute can be a lot of time. What's one lesson you've learned from dealing with policymakers, from going through the process, positive or negative? One thing you've learned that you want everyone else to know. And then what is, maybe not the top, but a top policy challenge for entrepreneurs in your country? Natalia already mentioned bankruptcy. I don't know if it'd be a top priority, but it is clearly still a challenge if there is no bankruptcy law. So what's one thing you've learned, or that you've heard others have learned, and what will be a top challenge for entrepreneurs in your country? Now, while you're thinking about that, I wanted to return to one thing Cristina said, which is this afternoon, myself and my colleague Arnobio Morelix from Startup Genome, and Cristina and Saralta will be at the meeting of GERN, the Global Entrepreneurship Research Network. And I know there are a few things more appealing than a research meeting at 4:30 in the afternoon, but you are all welcome to come in and join. I don't know where it is, you have to look at the agenda. But feel free to come in and out. You're not going to hurt our feelings if you leave and you decide it's boring. But some of the stuff in there is hopefully relevant to your experience both in programs and policy. So who wants to start? Their lessons and their challenges. All right. Tell us again, remind us again, your country.
Theodore Kluivers from the Netherlands, work for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs at the Netherlands Enterprise and Development Agency. What I've learned being involved with entrepreneurship for the last 7 years is I wanted to redefine diplomacy and really democratize embassies. So what we've been doing is we've been using our ambassador to tackle major issues on policy in the different countries. We've been to different places, 29 countries in Africa, 8 in the Middle East, and we use, or at least I use our ambassador to really invite other people around the table, ministers and other people, and I'm really using our ambassador to speak about certain things. I have a friend here who's also a colleague, I call her a colleague. We do a program in Sudan where we brought different people, different policymakers of using our ambassadors and our policymakers to talk about certain challenges, because they open doors. They have institutions that are called embassies that are really powerful, and when you join your efforts together with the US ambassador and the German ambassador or the whatever China ambassador, and you talk about a topic, the minister cannot refuse to listen, and that helps the local ecosystem a lot. That's my lesson learned.
I'm going to let you off the hook for the challenge since you work in foreign affairs. So But the Ministry of Foreign Affairs is also the co-host of the upcoming, I think Jonathan mentioned it yesterday, the Global Entrepreneurship Summit in The Hague in just 2 months.
Yes.
Yep. And that's exactly right. The ambassadors and embassies are a dramatically under-leveraged resource around most of the world for exactly this kind of work, definitely in the US and elsewhere. Who would like to go next?
Hello everyone, good afternoon. My name is Eva Yue from Taiwan. Instead of speaking the challenge that in terms of policy making, I'm not quite sure whether it is actually an opportunity for startups in Taiwan, because there are many resources channels so that they can access to get funding from different government agencies. So what I'm thinking, and I have already heard from you, that in maybe South Africa, you have many stakeholders in the public sector, which might not be integrated good enough, right? But in Taiwan, we have a similar phenomenon that many governmental agencies or many different ministries providing resources or funding or budgets, nurturing startups in different sectors. For example, Ministry of Science and Technology, Ministry of Economic Affairs, and even in National Development Council, which has a function of nurturing startups going abroad, collaborating with counterparts in Silicon Valley of the America. So with so many different ministries providing similar functions, So I would think that is not very good from non-profit organizations' point of view. Because I'm from a Digital Transformation Association, promoting the methodology and arousing awareness of transforming digitally to the SMEs especially. But as I said, that there may be good thing for startups because there are so many different channels so that they can seek for resources. So I don't know whether this is challenging or not, but I'm wondering if you have similar problems, then how do you deal with that? Thank you.
Igor's nodding his head knowingly. I think this is certainly a common challenge. When we did some work across SNAP, talking to a lot of policymakers who started Genome, this came up a lot. But also a lot of countries are taking action to integrate or unify or coordinate, and not just in words, but actually in trying to create new committees, which, the world needs more committees, but we're actually trying to coordinate actions and put things through a focal point. And Jen prepared a memo for the ministers yesterday, which will we be able to share that memo? We'll be able to share it, but this is one of the themes that emerged from this, is how are countries exactly trying to overcome that? Who would like to go next?
Yes, Igor from Brazil. I'm working in the Ministry of Economy. I'm not an entrepreneur, but I hear a lot and I talk to a lot of entrepreneurs in Brazil. I could say some of the difficulties that the entrepreneurs have there. For example, like difficulty to access to capital, lack of information, lots of programs and doors to enter, and they don't know where to go, where to seek. But one particular that I would like to highlight here, it's entrepreneurs and startups has difficult to participate on public procurement. And public procurement, as you know, should be an instrument to foster innovation and to hire a startup to help the government to solve their problems. And this in Brazil, it's a very, very big issue because startups, they cannot compete. It's difficult to give the product on the scale that is needed, or the services, the competitions, they cannot get to that price and so on. So access to public procurement, I think it's an issue in Brazil, and I don't know if it's in other countries.
Just want to comment something.
Christian, you come from a country, Chad, that has hardcore realities. Everybody here at least knows what entrepreneurship is. When we talk about policy and entrepreneurship in Chad, can you share your lessons learned?
Thank you, Trevor. Actually, I've even tried to organize Startup Nation Policy Hub in Chad, but I couldn't succeed because no one is ready to engage in that procedure. It's something very difficult in Chad, like implementing policies is a matter of a lot of engagement from even the start entrepreneurs, where the entrepreneur once is not well settled, and secondly from the government that doesn't see the need of changing policy for people that are not ready to engage in that procedure. So it is very difficult somehow, but I think that we still try to set a policy. Like last week, what we did is we gathered all the stakeholders, ministries, UN agencies, and embassies too, to propose or to suggest some of the big points that we need maybe to change in the ecosystem. We suggested more than 25 different policies, and we are working on having maybe a book that is called 25 Ideas to Change the Ecosystem, and maybe that will push a little bit for a policy change, but actually it is more difficult than maybe anywhere in the world to implement a new policy in Chad, because actually you need first to work on people before working on the policy, so it's different stuff.
Pick up on two things that were said. First, this point about It was difficult. You were not able to hold a policy hat because you couldn't even get people there. You couldn't even get their mindset. You couldn't even prepare the ground. That's a really good, and it'd be interesting to hear, especially from South Africa, how you did it. That's a really good point from any policymaking perspective, is that we can talk about the right policy design and right policy structure all day. It relates to your point about working with the ambassadors and the embassies as well, but how do you even prepare the ground and to have that conversation? Kind of the parable of the mustard seed, right? What's the best ground that it's going to grow on or not grow on? So that's kind of what Natalia was talking about. I mean, a lot of arm pulling and jacket tugging in Ecuador to bring people along, and that kind of is what has to happen before some of this stuff. When Igor was talking about public procurement, there were a lot of heads nodding along. So this is either a common challenge or you figured it out in your countries. And I was having breakfast with someone yesterday who said, if you're going to, the place to start with entrepreneurship policy in a lot of countries is with public procurement. One, because it's a lever that government has direct access to, but two, because in a lot of places that is often where you see the most incumbent dominance and protection with these big incumbent companies who are constantly winning the same government contracts. So it's one way to break it or at least make inroads. Who wants to go next?
Hi, so I don't really represent a country because I work for the African Development Bank. So we have different regional member countries. And I just wanted to add from what the colleague in chat said, beyond the initial mindset shift that's needed, one of the things that we struggle with a lot for regional member countries is actually implementation. So the willingness is there, the drive is there to really design some of these policies, but then the human capital just isn't there necessarily in some of these ministries to implement what's been written. And then also, one thing we're trying to do is to really work around affirmative procurement. So how can policies in some of our regional member countries really give preferential treatment to women and youth-led companies and startups? Because one of the biggest things we're finding is actually giving that one opportunity, whether it be a small contract to a starting SME, that can create a track record for them. And this is even something we're thinking about internally at the African Development Bank, our own procurement systems. How can we also change the way we prepare so that we can set the tone for our regional member countries as well?
Thank you for your comments. I also wanted to ask you, because some of our Startup Nations Policy Network members have said that things change when a startup savvy person, perhaps even a former entrepreneur, got in government. I know that was the case for Argentina, for example. The lawyer of one of the unicorns became part of the mayor's team, and then he went on to the national government, and things changed because they understood what it is like to be a startup and a new and young business versus the more traditional SMEs, which also need policy instruments, but the ones that are just being born are different. So I don't know if that's something that happened in your governments in terms of infusing new talent inside so that someone can change or be the champion from within. Has that happened?
In our country, the actual minister now is a minister of industry. They put together the external affairs, industry, and also investment. So he used to be, like, really, I'm not joking, but he used to be a great tennis player, but actually a businessman. So he was recognized as one of the businessmen in the biggest city in Ecuador. However, he became the ministry, and it really helped in the way that how the public sector looked at enterprises. Because we went through a period of politics where being a successful enterprise was something bad. So when you have these champs in the right places, in the right moments, I think it really helps to change the perspective of the whole public sector. So it was an advantage because I think he is one of the main voices now of the law within the public sector.
Dane, do you have any other comments? I think we committee for the Startup Nations Ministerial. She's managed the program for SME policy in DG Grow at the European Commission.
Thank you. No, I just wanted to jump in. I came in later in the session. I mean, I do think, like we can see with us, that it does make a lot of difference when you have certain people in certain places. And I think you can already see how things are here. It's often through personal commitment that things actually move forward. So I think we should not underestimate the human factor. And I think it's also a very positive thing that we can actually influence things that we want to. I would like to come back to the public procurement thing, because one of the things we have been thinking about, and still that's a sort of out-of-the-box idea, is because indeed, as you point out, I mean, it's a very natural tendency for public authorities to actually go for incumbents, because you want to make sure that even in the conditions that you have a track record, etc. So we're thinking of an insurance scheme actually that you would basically cover, you know, the potential losses for government if you go for a startup and then the startup goes bankrupt, doesn't deliver, etc. In order to encourage this, because under our rules we cannot give a preferential treatment to SMEs or startups because that's actually discrimination. We can, let's say, support them in other ways, but we cannot have a set aside, you know, 20% must be for SMEs. We have other means to do it by doing smaller lots. And that by definition that attracts SMEs. But I think this is something, when you think a bit of new, innovative, I would say, public policy ideas, one could explore further that you actually share out the risk a little bit if something happens. And we have a whole program now, which I also invite you to share. I have colleagues dealing with that, so if anybody's interested, I can guide you to those colleagues, of innovative procurement, where we actually really try to engage startups. And I think indeed, as you said, it's a huge market. And that can be a new avenue, especially in the tech.
Thank you, Dane. I was just going to say in wrapping, maybe one thing good within South African context is that we've got specific mandates as different institutions in terms of driving even the capacity building within entrepreneurs. Like there's Bulane there. We've got the Ministry of Small Business. Now, when there are institutions that have got focus, it's easy to collaborate and take those silo voices, bring them together, and make sure that whatever policy that government wants to push will make sure that it happens. So I don't know how the structures of the other countries like Chad and wherever it is, but I think the first point of entry would look at the ministry that drives the small businesses, because that's where the startup falls in. And then when you've got to have identified that, then you'll be able to get the key people that will lead the influence within the national government that will make sure those policy voices, those economic advisors, all the people that are needed to drive and influence policies are brought under the same roof.
That's a really good point. Finding a broker within your government that can bring other agencies and ministries together to collaborate is important, and it's super difficult because of egos within the government, and a lot of ministries write to us saying, why did you invite the Minister of Economy? We actually, the ICT ministry, manage startup policy. So you can see it's divided. If you're divided as a government, then you know the startups also get tired. They only want support. They don't care where it comes from. So that's a really good point and an excellent example from South Africa and from this government as well, from Bahrain. I want to make one final point before I turn over to Dane for his final remarks, is that a lot of you mentioned making the case for why startups should devote some time to making their voice heard when it comes to policies, and also why governments should devote time to thinking about policy and entrepreneurship. That's where research comes in. It can sound dry and boring, but we can help you through our research community, get you the right reports, the right stats, so that you can make the case for how this could impact or is impacting your economy negatively, or you're underutilizing the potential of your people if you're not promoting or if you're putting barriers for these entrepreneurs. So count on Jen for that via the Startup Nations Policy Network and as well as the Research Network. Thank you.
Thanks, Cristina. I think what really emerged from this for me is, it's going to sound obvious, but kind of what a common theme through all these discussions is the policy policy design and the policy structure can be relatively straightforward. We can have a great idea, we can have a great process, a good structure, maybe copy from elsewhere, but on one side of it, you have what you talked about, which is just laying the groundwork for people to be ready for it and accept it, to get this mindset, and then what you talked about and what Kristen talked about, which is then on the implementation side, that the human factor involved. So on both sides of policy design and structure, we have just like political, it's just like dealing with politics, not like party politics, small b politics of bringing people along and bringing support and having endless meetings and phone calls and banging your head against the wall and things like on both sides of it. So, and that sounds obvious, but that's definitely a clear theme and emerge from all these experiences is that just the time and that human element on both sides of it, laying the groundwork and then the implementation.
Thank you, everyone. We hope you will continue to chat about these topics throughout the 2 days that remain, and then there's another set of sessions now starting, so do keep in touch. I'll give you my card if you want to stay in touch with the policy network that we have at Jen. Thank you.